Hello and welcome, I am Raziel. Now today I want to talk about the old world and whether or not Games Workshop picked the best time period to do it in. Now we know the time period is within the time of the three emperors, but is this really the best time? There's very little lore actually about this time. Surprisingly, we know loads about the war against chaos, we know loads about the end times, we know loads about the War of the Sundering, the War of the Beard, even Sigmar Howdenhammer's life himself. We got 3 books on that alone. Well, the time of the Three Emperors lore is very sparse. What I could find looking at old rule books and army books, I should say, not codices, it's basically the most in one book I found was a single page, and that was basically fighting the vampire counts, most of it. Which is weird because the vampire counts at the time were pretty much defeated after the vampiric wars. And, it kind of feels weird to have this time period where there's very little lore. Now, Games Workshop said they were trying to copy the Horus Heresy and wanted to find a time period which was more akin to the Horus Heresy. And honestly, what I feel like it was basically, they saw, hey, the Horus Heresy is a civil war within the Imperium. The time of the Three Emperors is a civil war within the time of the Empire. And that is the only connection they really made. And it ended with chaos fighting, and that's it. And eventually chaos got defeated. But that was a different time period. That was a time of the war against chaos, not the Three Emperors. So how he came to this conclusion is kind of weird, and saying like this is akin to the Horus Heresy. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And if we look at how the Horus Heresy started and how the game started, it's even far more removed than that. Now, the Horus Heresy, we've known about it since basically the first edition. It was more fleshed out in the second edition, and we've had more and more up until 2006, when the first book dropped with the Horus Rising and that first trilogy, which is a good trilogy to read. It's a great series of books. And it really does set the scene of the Horus Heresy. However, the game itself came out in 2012, 6 years after the first book. So we had 6 years of books before the Horus Heresy game, and so we had many battles, many stories and people and characters which we could look at and build upon and play within our games. However, with the time of the Three Emperors, at the moment we have one novel which is not even set during, it's set during the time of the Three Emperors, but not really related to, because it's in Bretonia. That's like saying, that this thing happened during this time, so it's connected. Well, no, it's not. Just because those two things happen in the same time period don't mean it's connected. A good example is the Napoleonic Wars and the first steam train. The Napoleonic Wars was 1804 to 1815, 1803 to 1815, I believe, and the first steam train was invented in 1804. It's like saying, hey, we're going to do a story about the first steam train, and we're going to connect it and say it's part of the era of the Napoleonic Wars. Yes, they happened at the same time, but they're very, very loosely connected, and it's the same sort of thing is happening here. It's adding all these armies and factions which aren't really connected to the actual period of time or the historical events within. So that's kind of strange. It's kind of backwards. So what I was thinking is there a better time period they could have done? Now, the thing is, there is, because it's what you can have a look at and what you can see. Let's look at the first real good one, would be the time of Legends. It's a long period of time and everyone is, involved. And we see, good guys going bad and bad guys being even worse. And we have some great stories like the Sundering, the War of the Beard, and of course the life and times of Sigmar Howdenhammer. These are fantastic times. It would have really been able to make new models because, you could use the fantasy stuff, but so much of the fantasy stuff couldn't be used because they weren't been about, especially with the Empire. Having them back to that more barbaric, more uncivilized era would have been fun and enjoyable to watch and see and have the lore progress. As I said, the lore's there. We have 3 books for Sigmar Howdenhammer already, and it's well worth reading if you ever get the chance, by Graham McNeill. And yeah, that would have been a good time. However, it is a very vast, long period of time, and it might be a bit harder to explain certain battles between the elves and like the Dark Elves, because that was a massive civil war of Sunderwing was a massive civil war. Dark Elves weren't really a thing at the time until they left Ulthuan and became their own thing. And same with, you'd have wars between the elves and the dwarves. So yeah, that's a good time, but there is a lot of issues with it, as in you wouldn't be able to do certain battles, and it would have been more of a problem than anything else. The second one I would say is the War Against Chaos. The War Against Chaos has its own video game as well, the Mark of Chaos. It's a fantastic one. It also has Chaos Bane, which is at the end, just after the War Against Chaos. So we have a lot of the story leading up to it. So there's a lot of what the battles are like and what the area was like, and the absolute aftermath straight away. So we know what Nuln looked like, we know what all of it's like, and we know what happened to Magnus the Pious, and we know he elevated to the throne after his attack, after being attacked by Chaos. So that would have been a good period. And also we have many wars we know that happened. We had the Siege of Prague, the Dark Elves attacking the High Elves, and of course we had the attack on Nuln as well. And again, not only we do have 2 video games based on that, which we can look at and work upon, getting the lore from there, we have more lore on that as well. We have more stories on that within the Codices, Warhammer Army books, and of course the rule books. Those are actually well fleshed out within the Warhammer Fantasy lore. We know loads of stories. Yeah, Tomb Kings wouldn't have been a big deal because they weren't. They pretty much at that point were still, leave us alone, we want to be left alone, just leave us alone. And, certain other tribes and other things would definitely not been involved. Lustria, Lisman still not involved. The Ogres still not involved. The Ogres kind of sort of joined in because, food. But yeah, the Tomb Kings were pretty much, leave us alone. And so that's 2 of them. Now finally, for what periods of time would be good, the end times themselves. Now I reckon this would have been far more interesting. Everyone was involved. Everyone was involved. It was a massive world war. We know what happened at the end. And I think this would have been the best one because all the named characters would have been used. All of the models in the Warhammer Fantasy Battles would have been able to be used. Everyone was variable and used it. And we had a very good storyline. Well, the storyline was good. The books, not so. But like I said, the storyline was pretty good. We know what happened. And not only that, it was the complete reversal of the Horus Heresy. Where the Horus Heresy, Chaos lost. Sorry, spoiler. And in the end times, Chaos won and the old world was destroyed. And having that sort of as a time frame and knowing the ending is one of the things I think made Horus Heresy really good. Because knowing the ending and seeing how people changed and how they fell to Chaos or how they had to fight against Chaos, even not just physically but spiritually as well, would have been fascinating to watch. And again, we had 2 new games quite in recent times about the end times. We've had a series of novels and 2 games building up the lore and what it was about. We have the Vermintide games, which are such fun, especially if you're a Left 4 Dead player. If you like playing Left 4 Dead, Vermintide is well worth playing. And we had the novels as well. I believe there's another game, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't know if Total Warhammer is fixed on that time. I can't say. I've only played the first one, and those sort of games don't really do it for me. It's not the sort of game I like playing. I do have it, I just don't really play it. But like I said, we have a lot of lore for that time period, and a lot of information, and battles we could do, and named characters that we know and love taking place within that. So that's the period of time. Now, the other problem with the old world, which I'm seeing, is like I said, the Horus Heresy had 6 years of books before the game dropped. 6 years of books. So before they started designing it and actually releasing it, 4 years, that 4-year period, we had 2 years of books. So they had a good idea of what to do, and they had a good idea of what was coming as well. So they could have the game based around these battles, these campaigns, these stories, and have new characters involved with characters within the books. Now, with the old world, the lack of lore means lack of characters, lack of named characters. And I did say during my Ravening Hordes book, first impressions video, that was a problem. See, I didn't really go in depth to that, which is what this video is for. See, the thing is with named characters, especially with a time period narrative, really anchors the story. See, the period I said, and I'll stay with this, when you have a smaller time scale, you have a bigger scope for stories. I know it feels like a paradox, but let me explain. See, everyone says everyone has a story. That is true. But most people's stories are boring. Add that to a 10,000 year period of time, yeah, that's a lot of boring stories, and all the good stories are just going to be diluted into that. You have this one period of time, which is pretty short, more interesting stories come up to the top and get told and retold. And that's what makes it good. And named characters does that. Having a named character set during a time where you can say, right, this person was here, and that's like you had the Orc Slayer, which is like the only character we really know about during the time of the Three Emperors, or the time period of what they're talking about. The first Three Emperors are pretty much dead at this point, so they're not even counted. And the other named characters don't even count either because they're immortal. You have the High Elf, the Teclis and his brother. You have Malekith and Marathi. You have Cetra, and you have the Chaos ones as well, Valkyr. That's it. Those are the characters you got. They're immortal anyway, so they're going to be throughout the story of Warhammer Fantasy anyway. So you can't really pin it down to them, other than they were basically big players on this time frame. But having a single character you can point out and go, like, this is his time period, this is what we can look at, makes it a far more immersive storyline. So that's the first thing. Like, if we look at Tycho for the Blood Angels, we know his life and his death. We know Armageddon and when it's set, because we can just look at him. We can't look at Yarick. Yarick survived Armageddon and lived far longer afterwards, so we can't use Yarick, but we can use Tycho because of his death. And that's the same with the End Times. The End Times has an end, and everyone pretty much died. And so we have this absolute end point. So the people we're talking about can say, like, this is what happened, this is the time period we're looking at, and this is the year, date, and whatever. And we can therefore look at what happened at that time period and look even deeper. Where, like I said, if we look at Valkyr is very old, and we say, oh, which period of her life are we looking at? Oh, when she was fighting the Empire. Which time when she was fighting the Empire? Oh, when, she fought against Marienburg. Which time against Marienburg? So, but when we look at, like I said, Tycho, and we go, okay, Tycho was on Armageddon, okay, Second War, he died, he was Death Company. First War of Armageddon, okay, Second War of Armageddon, I should say, he was alive, he was in his gold, he was not in his Death Company armor at this point, and we got that period, and then we have the second period on the third War of Armageddon, and say now he is in his black armor, he's Death Company now, and we can very much pinpoint when it is. But with the lack of named characters within the old world, kind of really shows this to be a bigger issue. And there are some other ones, like you got the Lady of the Lake, but she again is immortal, as we know she's an elf, and we have no one we can actually go, yeah, this is his time period. And I mean, if they were going to do the time of the Three Emperors, rather than saying, okay, it's a time of Three Emperors, made something up new for Bretonia because of the Orc Slayer. He is a character and someone within the lore, and someone we can actually pinpoint his life period to from birth to end. He's a king. His story is well documented within Bretonia. I mean, it's not actually in the lore, but we can pretty much infer that, yeah, it's going to be well documented because he's a king and he did many great deeds. So, that is pretty much my thoughts on it. And I do think that the time of the Three Emperors was a bit of a poor choice, and the only real connection with the Horus Heresy is Empire in Civil War. And actually most of the fighting was within politics. It was very actual little fighting within the borders, because most of them were like, yeah, we're just going to be doing our own thing now. We don't want to fight, but we don't want to be ruled by you ever. We're going to be an independent state. And that was pretty much the biggest thing about it, that not many people realise. you have this idea of a civil war, that's all, empire versus empire, fire. Most of it, and if you do see the law which is written, there's very little fighting because the empire was still beset by external forces. They just said, we're not going to be ruled by you anymore. There was some skirmishes, it wasn't anything massive. It was pretty much, like I said, a lot of states going, we're not part of this, you free sort out yourself, we're staying independent. And they remained independent well up to the end as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was actually a kind of a fun video. I'm trying to do a couple of more fun videos. I have a lot of work on scalping I'm doing at the moment, and it is getting, I'm coming into this rabbit hole and it's getting deep. And it's, yeah, so I'm doing some more of these fun videos, just little thoughts and thinkings and what I'm doing. And just getting them out as well before I get this scalp, because I want this scalping video to be like a really good video. Like there's loads of evidence and stuff I'm just got to show, loads at all. So I'm going to do a couple more of these. It's going to be a couple of weeks before I get that video out. It's taken a lot of work. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Wayland Games down below as always if you wish to save 20% on your Warhammer, and free delivery after £20. There is also Forbidden Planet if you like comics, DVDs, manga, toys, plushies, really cool nerdy geeky stuff. Go give them a look. And there is my merchandise as well, cups, t-shirts, all my artwork, all mine, nothing repeated, nothing. I gotta do a new one actually. And finally there is my comic. If you want to see Little Red Riding Hood kick the hell out of some cyborg werewolves and Lovecraftian demons, monsters, gods, well, thank you very much for watching. See you all in the next one. Goodbye.